Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we cut through the noise to get you well-informed fast. You ever notice how uncertainty and risk just feel baked into everything we do?
Oh, absolutely.
Whether it's business or personal lives, even watching global events unfold, it often feels like we're navigating, constantly shifting ground.
It really does. And for anyone, maybe you're just trying to understand the world better, or perhaps prepping for a big meeting. Getting a handle on how to navigate that uncertainty is, well, it's essential.
That's exactly where we're headed today. We're diving deep into the nuts and bolts of risk management, specifically how we reduce and control risks.
Right.
Our mission is to unpack effective risk mitigation strategies, look at practical risk control methods, see how these ideas play out in the real world across different sectors, and actually uncover some pretty surprising career opportunities here, especially for chartered accountants.
Yeah, that's a really interesting angle. And look, by the end of this deep dive, you'll have a much clearer picture, not just of the jargon, but how these concepts are actually used in really crucial ways. It's kind of a shortcut to getting properly informed on this.
Okay, let's get into it. So you've identified a risk, you've assessed how significant it might be. That's step one, right?
Crucial first step.
The next challenge isn't just, panicking. It's about building a stronger shield, maybe, or finding a way around the danger. That's risk mitigation.
That's it, exactly. When we talk mitigation, we're really talking about taking active steps. Steps to reduce either how likely a risk is to happen, or if it does happen, how bad the impact will be.
So basically lowering the chance of failure or the cost if things go wrong.
That's the sort of beginner view, you could say. But what's really insightful is how this evolves. For an expert, especially in, say, a bank's ICAP process.
Okay, what's ICAP again? Internal Capital Adequacy Assessment Process.
Exactly. It's how banks prove to regulators they've got enough capital for worst-case scenarios. In that context, mitigation means much more sophisticated, stress-adjusted controls.
Like what?
Think capital buffers, extra financial reserves,
Yeah.
or margins, collateral in financial deals, or even policy overlays. These are extra stricter rules designed to hold up even under extreme stress.
Wow, okay.
These aren't just tiny tweaks. They're powerful, direct ways to mitigate risk, built right in to boost resilience.
Right, I can definitely see how that works in a high-stakes place like a bank. Okay, so we understand mitigation now, but when we're actually facing a risk, how do we respond? What are the main options?
Right. And understanding you have options is key. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing. There's a whole toolkit, sometimes called the 4 pillars of risk treatment.
Yeah.
First up is avoidance.
Simple enough.
It's the most direct. You basically eliminate the risk by just not doing the risky thing.
So like a company deciding, nope, we're not launching in that politically unstable country.
Precisely. Or your example earlier about Indian banks getting out of crypto to avoid legal headaches.
Yeah, you just sidestep the whole issue. But doesn't that mean missing out on potential opportunities? How do you weigh that?
That's the critical question always. It's a trade-off. Sometimes the potential downside it massively outweighs any potential gain. It has to be a deliberate strategic choice.
Okay, what's pillar number 2?
That's retention. This is where you consciously look at a risk and decide, okay, we accept this, we'll live with the potential consequences.
Right.
It's a calculated decision. Often happens when the risk seems minor, or maybe the cost of actually mitigating it is just too high compared to the risk itself.
I guess that's a bit like me deciding not to buy the extended warranty on, like, a toaster, a calculated risk.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right.
Or think about airlines accepting the risk of minor turbulence. It happens, it's usually manageable. Or a business accepting small currency fluctuations.
Okay. I've even heard, sometimes companies might deliberately ignore what they see as really negligible cyber threats because fixing them would cost way more than the potential damage. Sounds pragmatic, if maybe a little risky itself.
It can be as long as the assessment is solid.
Huh.
Okay, third pillar, transfer.
Shifting it onto someone else.
Exactly, usually through contracts or the classic example, insurance.
Buying insurance, yeah. You're literally paying someone else to take the financial hit if something bad happens.
Right. Or outsourcing can be a form of transfer too. Like Infosys outsourcing its cyber insurance needs to a third-party insurer.
Right.
They're shifting that specific risk burden.
It's like paying someone else to hold the hot potato.
Good analogy.
Yeah.
And finally, number 4 is hedging.
Okay.
This is more about using specific tools, often financial or technical, to offset the risks.
Okay, so like using derivatives to manage foreign exchange risk. Or futures options. Diversification strategies count too, right?
Definitely. Diversification is a form of hedging risk. And think about Apple. They famously use FX forwards to hedge their euro revenue, protecting themselves against currency swings.
It's like building a financial shock absorber.
That's a great way to put it. What's really interesting, though, is how these strategies often interact. You might use avoidance for one risk, but that could actually uncover or even create a different risk
Oh, interesting.
that maybe you then need to retain or hedge. It's more like a dynamic puzzle than just picking one box.
And how does this fit into the bigger picture? You mentioned a quadrant.
Yeah, sometimes people talk about a risk response quadrant. Generally, avoidance and transfer are often used for those high impact, high likelihood risks, the ones you really want to get rid of.
Makes sense.
Whereas retention and hedging are typically for risks with lower impact or likelihood, or maybe risks you've decided you can manage.
Okay, so we've picked a strategy: avoid, retain, transfer, hedge. But a strategy is just an idea, right?
Mhm.
How does it actually happen on the ground, day to day? What is risk control?
Good question. Risk control is really about putting tangible processes in place. It's the practical stuff you do to reduce how often a risk event happens or how severe it is if it does. It's the daily implementation of your strategy.
Right, so we're talking about things like installing fire alarms,
Yeah.
having strict audit rules, practicing good cyber hygiene, doing regular compliance checks, monitoring systems.
All of those. And I know HDFC Bank, for instance, brought in that maker checker system for payments. One person initiates, another verifies.
Oh, yeah.
That's a direct control, a tangible way to prevent errors or fraud, putting a strategy into action.
That HGFC example is spot on. But this must raise a question, right? Before you put in a control, you have to ask, is it worth it?
Exactly. That's the cost-benefit analysis. Is the cost of implementing and maintaining this control actually worth the reduction in risk it provides? It's a crucial economic check. You want to use resources efficiently.
But hang on, there's a big exception here, isn't there? What if the law says you have to do it?
Ah, yes. Crucial point. If a law or regulation mandates a control, then that cost-benefit calculation kind of goes out the window.
Compliance first.
Compliance becomes paramount. You just have to do it, regardless of the immediate financial cost-benefit trade-off in pure risk terms.
Okay.
And within organizations, especially complex ones like in finance, there's a fundamental model for managing this control environment: the 3 lines of defense. Have you come across that?
Vaguely. Remind me.
Sure. Typically, the first line is the business operations themselves. They own and manage their risks directly. The second line is often the risk management function, providing oversight, tools, and challenge. And the third line is internal audit, giving independent assurance that the first 2 lines are working effectively.
Right. Different layers of responsibility.
Exactly, each playing a distinct role in controlling risk.
Now, this is where I think it gets really fascinating, especially for listeners maybe in finance or accounting. There's this common idea, isn't there, that risk management is just for, like, actuaries or people with MBAs.
Yeah, that's a definite misconception.
But the surprising truth, or maybe not so surprising when you think about it, is that chartered accountants are actually incredibly well-positioned to lead in risk management.
They absolutely are. Think about the skills a CA brings: deep understanding of finance, governance, audit processes, that real attention to detail. It makes them uniquely valuable in this space.
So let's break down some of those roles. First, you can be a manager.
Right. CAs can lead chief risk officer teams, CRO teams. They can be involved in setting the whole risk appetite for the organization, designing the frameworks.
Like Axis Bank, you mentioned their CRO is a CA.
That's right. Leading crucial processes like ICAP, which we talked about for capital planning, and shaping credit risk policy. That's a major leadership role, setting the risk tolerance for a huge institution.
Okay, manager. What else?
Then there's the auditor role. CAs use established frameworks like COSO-ERM to evaluate internal controls, governance, basically checking if the systems are working.
So, like the EY audit teams checking the strength of risk controls as part of their job.
Exactly. Testing the effectiveness, making sure things are robust.
And the third one?
Consultant. This is where CAs might design enterprise-wide risk management, or ERM strategies for clients.
Ah.
You see the Big Four advisory firms doing this all the time, designing ERM frameworks for banks, for public sector undertakings. Or, another example, a CA could be designing a sophisticated credit scoring model for a bank. That's pure risk consulting.
Manager, auditor, consultant. We can use MK as a mnemonic.
Ha! MAC, yeah, that works. It really shows the breadth. And what's really compelling is how these M&I roles connect into wider banking and governance.
How so?
Well, you see CAs leading those ICAP teams we discussed, doing policy reviews, sitting on really important model risk committees that scrutinize complex financial models, defining audit scope.
Mm-hmm.
And the CRO role itself, often held by a CA, is defining things like stress testing scope, making sure the bank aligns with regulations like Basel and Third Pillar 2.
Which pushes for managing all significant risks.
Right, exactly. Not just the obvious ones. It's about meticulously documenting your mitigation logic, your stress test results, and making sure someone clearly owns each risk.
So we've really covered a lot of ground. We started by sort of dissecting risk mitigation and control, what they really mean.
Yeah, explored those four main strategies: avoid, retain, transfer, hedge,
Look at how they're actually applied, the practical side, the controls,
and uncovered those really significant career paths for CAs in this field.
which hopefully gives you, listening, a much clearer view of how organizations, and maybe even individuals, can strategically manage and control uncertainty.
It really is about being proactive, building resilience, not just, reacting when things go wrong.
So what does this all mean for you? Here's maybe a final thought to ponder. How might understanding these frameworks, like the three lines of defense, or
Yeah.
the details of cost benefit versus regulation, how might that actually change the way you approach decisions?
Yeah, decisions in your career, maybe your personal finances.
Or even just how you read the headlines about businesses and regulations in this, let's face it, increasingly complex world. Something to think about.